Welcome to Tangi's Tapestry, where spirituality, law, motherhood, and relationships weave into a rich and meaningful discussion. I'm your host, Tangi, a mother, daughter, sister, friend, and an avid entrepreneur. Join me as I share my personal journey, explore faith-based discussions, and offer valuable legal insights. Each episode is designed to inspire, empower, and connect with individuals on their unique path. So let's dive into today's topic and embark on this journey together. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Tangi's Tapestry. I'm your host, Tangi, and today we are having an important conversation about setting boundaries with our loved ones. But before we get into today's topic, let's do a quick recap of episode 5, where I talked about fathers' rights in custody cases, and then I broke down some of the key legal rights and how fathers can build a strong case with integrity. And uh, also, I think I talked about some of the common mistakes to avoid. I'm trying to remember all of the stuff I talked about, but that was pretty much the gist of episode 5. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to it, go back, check it out, because it was packed with a lot of crucial information for fathers who are fighting for their children. But today is a more personal discussion. And, many of us were raised with, the ideal that our parents, they have the final say. We're not supposed to question them because it's considered disrespectful, or that we owe them an unwavering obedience. And granted, we do, we should obey our parents. However, as we grow into adulthood, we start to recognize some of our parents and even our other loved ones, their unhealthy patterns, some of the emotional wounds that we might have encountered along the way, and some behaviors that no longer serve us. So today I have a special guest who's joined me in this conversation, Miss Shai Shai. who She is one of my really good friends. She's a dynamic, multi-talented woman, mother, uh, you know, friend, like sister to me. Yes. Who's, her personal journey definitely includes some navigating of difficult relationships with, her mother. And so I brought her on so we could just have this candid conversation about setting boundaries. But before, I jump right into the conversation, I grab my Bible here, because y'all know I always have to have me a little scripture to set the tone. And the scripture, I actually had two of them that I thought were very fitting for this conversation. And that is one of the scriptures is found in Exodus 20:12, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation. And that scripture is, honor your father and mother, then you will live a long, full life in the land the Lord your God will give you. And then the other scripture is found in Ephesians 6:4. And that scripture reads, and now a word to you fathers, and I'm going to add in mothers. Don't make your children angry by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction approved by the Lord. And so when I think about those scriptures, they remind me that yes, we are to honor our parents, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to tolerate mistreatment from our parents. And so at the same time, our parents, they're called to treat their children with respect and care. So I think boundaries will help to create healthier relationships where both sides, not just mom and dad, but also us us kids, adult kids, young kids feel heard and we feel valued, right? Cuz
Yes,
that relationship's an ongoing it's an ongoing relationship even when you become an adult.
no doubt.
So, yeah, so I'm, Shay's here to help me unpack this conversation, and the first thing I want to jump into is talking about the reality of a strained parent-child relationship. And so Shay, I'd like to go ahead and just start off and ask you, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about the relationship with your mother and what led you to realize that setting boundaries was a necessary option for you.
Well, it started with my father, actually. My parents, they had a terrible marriage, and
Mhm.
when I was 10, their 13-year marriage came to an end. My father was always abusive towards me. His it was his joy. He found a lot of joy in tormenting me. It was fun for
Mm.
him, was not fun for me.
Wow.
And because my mother was someone, she was the other parent, the default parent. I put a
Mhm.
lot of trust and faith in her, and he would say things to put her in a bad light, but to be expected as someone who's no longer in the house, they thought they'd be in for the next forever.
Yeah.
And so over the years, it became a back and forth of, I'll give him another chance, repeat offender. He was a habitual line stepper, and I would withdraw, and then time would pass, cycle repeats. And that continued into my adult years with him. And when I became married, my mother did not like my spouse, could not stand it.
Mhm.
Even I recently found out she tried to, she had even enlisted my friend's help to try and get me to leave him. Okay, that's crazy, but whatevs. I did my best to honor my spouse and, tell her she needs to chill. But when I left that marriage and she came to my rescue, helped me move out of the home, flew me out and the kids out, I stayed with her for a spell. And it was then I started to realize, I don't think this lady liked me. But it's your
Mhm.
mom. Like, I'm a parent.
Right.
I love my kids, but
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
children. As adults, will I like the people they are?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I hope I do. I want that relationship with my children. And my mom, she just started doing little things that just seemed to make life harder and harder for me to get out and about and, get out of her space. If you don't want us here, say that.
Mhm.
Don't create an environment where I wanna leave. We are adults, we can have conversations. And
Right.
one of the tipping points was she was trying to reprimand me about how I was dealing with my then toddler son. He was 2.
Mhm.
And, he's 2, his parents just split up. He doesn't remember me and his father being married. He doesn't remember any of that.
Right.
And I'm dealing with my own issues, and I'm addressing 2 children in 2 different stages. And she was just on me. And I remembered back when I was a teenager, she's like, if you get pregnant, don't leave them kids with me. I've already raised my kids. I wanted a son and a daughter. I had a daughter and a son. Okay, I got a daughter and a son too. Let me do my thing. Let me parent my children the way that works for me. She didn't like
Mhm.
that. And that led to a lot of actions that in the moment I couldn't really see with the clarity I have now, because hindsight is 2020.
Yeah.
And it just became a snowball of distrust that culminated in her then siding with my ex-husband, and now they are in cahoots to raise my kids or parent my kids and villainizing me.
Mm.
And we had a conversation. She had an opportunity to clarify something,
Mhm.
in an email my ex-husband sent me, and she refused. I said, "Well, if you're telling me the truth, just reply all, everybody can be on the same page," and she refused. And that led me to say, there was a long conversation, but I eventually at the end of it just said, "You know what? You seem very firm in your actions. You don't wanna correct the record for all to see, and you've quadrupled down on it at this point. If that's what you wanna do and you're sticking with that, just know that I am removing myself from the situation. And my words were, "You know I'm never gonna speak to you again, right? I don't talk to your ex-husband, who is my father." It's like, "I
Yeah.
don't talk to him, you know I'm not gonna talk to you." She and
So,
her yeah, her response
yes.
was a, "That's how you feel."
Yeah. So for you, setting a boundary meant to cut your mother completely off. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
because the previous boundaries were not respected,
Okay.
and I'm, any for those who study Enneagrams, Enneagram 9 here. I don't like confrontation. I do not.
Right, right, right.
But at some point, you've got to say, "Enough is enough." And it's
Mhm.
what's funny is when I was growing up, she would always tell me, "You can't just cut people off." I said, "Snip, snip, yes, I can and will,
Right. And you and I've
and
had
will."
this conversation before how I feel about the cutting off
Mhm.
completely your parents. I mean, I know there are people who are like they have a skill set in cutting people off. And I think that, sometimes there's like this biggest, I would say one of the biggest misconceptions is that setting boundaries automatically means cutting people off. And I think when you are dealing with, boundaries, for me, I think it's about preserving relationships and not necessarily destroying them. And so, with for me, we've had this conversation before. I always, whenever you guys tell me you're all cutting off your moms or, a loved one, especially your mother,
Mhm.
it really resonates with me because, you know my story with my
Right.
mom. I had a difficult relationship with my mother growing up. We didn't always see eye to eye. She struggled with her issues of
Mhm.
like drug abuse and all of that stuff, and she would be good at one point and then not good. And so as I got older, some of those things were like triggers for me. And when I cut her off that last time, that was
Yeah,
the final that
that
was
was
the
the
final
last time.
cutoff. And when she passed away suddenly, I had a regret of not making
Mhm.
that peace with her. And I think sometimes it's good for us to like give people their space, but I also think we have to figure out a way how to navigate those conversations instead of just cutting people off. Because I have friends who
Mhm.
do that to me now that are like really good close, well, they were really good
Or
close friends, and in the moment that something goes wrong or we don't get along, you silence your communication with me. You just cut me off. There's no conversation to be
yeah,
had.
I
There's
don't like
nothing.
that.
That's very hurtful. You know what I'm
It
saying? Because
is.
it's like if you truly love somebody, whether it's a parent, a good friend. Now I get it if you want to cut people off who are like, you know, acquaintances, nobody, you don't really, there was really no relationship
Mhm.
there. But if it's somebody that you genuinely have a love for and you just cut them off without even having an inkling of explanation as to why you need the space, then I
I
think
don't
that's
need an
where it's
explanation
yeah,
if you are abusive. I don't care
well,
what
right,
the
well,
explanation is.
right, and let me say, not in a sense of abuse, right? So,
Mhm.
but I'm saying there are some people who, if they just don't get along, if they're just a dispute,
Right.
the issue, they just cut you off. They don't. I'm
I
done.
don't
I'm
like
not
that.
talking to that
That's
person.
ugly.
That is so hurtful and so just that to me isn't setting a boundary. That's actually destroying a relationship because
Yeah,
then at that
that's
point
not a
I'm like,
boundary.
yeah, because
That's
at
not
that
setting
point,
a boundary.
right. But when you are dealing with a loved one, a parent, or whomever, and they are consistently toxic and they are causing you harm, I do think that there are instances where you do need to cut someone off, but I think it warrants a conversation, like you should have that conversation with them and not just be like, I'm just cutting you off. I'm never talking to you again. But at least have that conversation, because that's not what I did with my mom.
Right.
Like I was just like, oh, she's tripping again. I am just going, and I told her I'm blocking you. Like, and that was, I wish going, looking at it now, I wish I could have
Mhm.
gone back and said, Mom, let's have a conversation about what's going on with you. And then I'm just telling you, I'm not blocking you out of my life forever, but right now in this season,
Right.
I just need a little bit of space, and I think that's a more healthy approach
Oh,
when you're
yeah,
dealing with
absolutely.
somebody that you love.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what so for you, what are some practical ways that you set boundaries without completely blocking your a parent or whomever? Like, I know you said you had given her grace plenty of time.
Grace and space. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, like, what are some of those things that you did early on before you got to that point where you're just like, okay, I can't do this anymore.
I mean, just telling someone how you don't wanna be treated or you do wanna be
Mhm.
treated, like, "I don't
Yeah.
appreciate you," you don't have like, I remember saying back when I was taking the bar in 2020, bar exam.
Mhm.
She's like, "Oh, I
Mhm.
don't understand why you doing this. You don't understand why I would want to take an exam to be licensed to increase my income,
Right.
potential income, so I can take
Yeah.
better care of myself because put your
Mhm.
mask on first, and then take care of my children. What is there to understand about that?
Yeah.
I don't." At the time, I had $320,000 in student loan debt. You don't think
Mhm.
I want to be able to pay some of that back or work in a
Right.
capacity where it can be forgiven? Like,
Mhm.
let's talk real dollars and cents here.
Yeah.
You're questioning my desire to improve my quality of life. Don't
Right.
question. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. Because now you're being
Yeah.
disrespectful and I'm not a fan. Or
Right.
just
So
saying,
so
yeah, and I've said to my father, I don't like the way you do this.
Mhm.
Every time, like clockwork, we're good, and then you go off the handle and we're not good. I can't
Yeah.
live with that up and down.
Right, right. Yeah. And that's what
I'm
it
not
is.
a
Yeah. Yeah, when you don't have that stability of, like, peace, and there's always
yeah,
some kind of
that's the goal.
chaos, some kind of like drama going on. It can become toxic in your life. So for you, you communicated your
Yeah,
feelings, and then at that point, it was still that those issues were still going on. And
present.
so,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. So when you did, decide that it was time for you to kind of just, sever, I don't want to say sever the relationship, but, kind of like
go no
cut your
contact.
mom.
I
Yeah,
went
no
no contact.
contact. Yeah. Did you have any guilt
No,
with she's like,
no.
it's a hard no for me.
It's a hard no for me because I am the
Yeah, yeah.
person who sits there and thinks about it. I don't block people. That's not my jam. Like people,
That's
oh, I
good.
blocked this
Yeah.
guy I was talking to. I'm not doing that. I want you to know that
Yeah.
I watched the phone when you call.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
watched it and I'm purposely not answering it because I'm purposely not dealing with you.
I
I
cannot
already
with
told
you.
you I wasn't dealing with you. I don't have to block you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I went no contact with my parents. I've asked. I let
Mhm.
them know how I felt. And if you are not willing to acknowledge my feelings or at least why I would feel the way I feel,
Yeah.
and you continue, I'm not continuing with you.
Yeah.
There's no need.
Yeah. And I think about this too, even with my own children that are adults, whenever we get in our moments and we have our issues, the moment that I see, especially like with my oldest, the moment that I see that she gets mad at me and she'll be like, I'm gonna go, and she'll hang the phone up, and then we don't talk for a few days. I'm like, okay, yeah, this isn't good. This isn't gonna work for me. We need to, and one of us will either reach out, because she knows
Mhm.
how I feel about being like blocked, or like the
Yeah,
silent treatment, because she knows that that's a trigger for me.
period.
So anybody close to me that knows that that's a trigger, and if I can feel that they're using that as a way to hurt me intentionally, that's a
We're
problem.
not
But with
doing
her,
that.
Yeah, but with my kids, they know that that's a problem, and so they'll eventually reach out to me and be like, "Okay, mom, let's fix this," or I'll reach
Mhm.
out to them and let's fix this, and I think that's a healthy boundary to have. It's because I think it's good to give people their space, right? It's good to be
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I can't deal with you right now. I don't want to talk to you right now. I love you, but I'm gonna love you from a distance. I don't know how much time I need, but let me have this space. And
Mhm.
then let's bring it back and talk about it. And then again, like even with me and my sister, for example, like after my mom passed, my sister and I, we stopped talking for from 2020 to we just started talking on my birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on my birthday, I think this year, or was it last year? I don't remember. Girl, the years be things be blurring together. But we went years without talking to each other, and that
Mhm.
was the longest that we had never spoken to each other. And it was just, I think, a buildup of so many years of us just having issues with each other. But I
Yeah.
was so thankful that we restored that relationship, because I'm like, I already had one person so close to me, my mother, pass away. Um, and not have that conversation with her
Right.
to make peace. My heart would break if that happened with me and my sister. So I was so thankful that God brought us back together to have that
That's
conversation.
awesome.
And now we've promised each other, even if we get sick of each other and mad at each other, we will not weaponize silence amongst each other
Right.
we'll give each other the space that we need, but we won't be cutting each other off indefinitely or anything like that. And I think that's a healthy boundary, because I mean, I feel I still suffer with a little bit of guilt with my mom.
Really?
It's not a guilt that, right, it's not a guilt that like disables me to where I can't function in life or anything, but I
But
still
it stings
sometimes
a little
think,
bit. Yeah, it
yeah, it's almost
stings.
like, God, what if I had just did this, or what if I had not blocked, because I actually blocked her number,
Yeah.
like she couldn't call me, you couldn't get through, and I won't do that again to anybody. I'm not gonna delete people. I'm not
Mhm.
blocking people. I'm not doing that. If I feel like you don't like me no more, you don't want to talk to me no more, I guess that's the issue between, because then if you don't communicate it with me, I don't have no way to fix whatever the issues are with people.
But that's a thing. People think you need to fix it. Like, people think
Yeah.
forgiveness means you have the same access to me. I forgave my
Right,
mom.
right, right.
I
Yeah, yeah,
forgave
yeah.
her when she was doing it. I was like, "Let it go, Shay. She's
Yeah.
she's she's on her thing and let her be on her thing, but
Mhm.
I will not give you access to me like that again. There's no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no
And I
way. You don't get a front row
yeah,
to the Shay show. You can watch on TV like everybody else."
yeah. And I think that's important too. That piece of it is the access piece. Because, I know I'm not the greatest person. I know I've hurt some people, and not intentionally, right? But I've
Right.
done things that have caused
I'm
pain to
human. I get it.
someone. Yeah, and I feel like if they're going to forgive, they can forgive, and we still have a relationship. But don't forgive me, and then we have a relationship, and then
You
you're
bring that up.
like, but then you start, right, and if something goes wrong, then you completely cut off access. It's either like, if you want to forgive me and don't want me to have access to you, keep it that way all the time,
Right, keep the
like,
same energy. One
keep
band,
the
one
same,
sound.
right, keep the same energy. If that's your boundary, is to completely block me off, then keep that same energy, but don't bring me in, make me feel like we're good, and you love
And then
me and you
you
care
cut me
about
off at the
me, and
knees.
then cut me off again as soon as something that I don't even know
Move.
what happened. Like those are unhealthy boundaries. To me, those are not boundaries. Those definitely are, instances where someone is acting in a way to destroy you, not to have a to
Yeah, those
preserving the
those
relationship.
those
You're
are
not
not
trying to preserve
boundaries.
the relationship anymore.
That's
Like,
not a
you've let me
boundary,
know
that's a
you're not.
weapon.
Yeah, yeah, you're not we're not friends, we're not family, whoever it might be. And so, yeah, that right there, where you said, about having access, people not having access, because there are some people who I don't let have access to me, who have hurt me
Mhm.
really truly bad, but they're not. I've never really probably even seen them or viewed them as close to me anyways, so it was easy for
Right,
me to just
it's
be
not a big
like,
loss.
You
It's
don't
not a big
have
deal.
you yeah, but, like, when it comes to, like, people I genuinely have a love for, whether it's a family member, a
Mhm.
friend, um, it's harder for me to cut people, like, off and not give them access to me because I wanna try to fix the relationship,
I'm
if
not
it can be
fixing nothing.
fixed.
Right,
Right,
I've told
I know
people,
your
like,
stance,
somebody
yeah.
somebody said this to me the other day. They were like, "Well, you need to be the bigger person." No, I'm the smallest person you've ever conceived.
But does
A
it
Martian
depend
is
on
a
what
giant to me because I have done the work on the front end. I've done the work already
Right,
on the front
right.
end.
Right,
So,
but let me ask
I'm
you,
not gonna be the bigger person.
does it depend on what it is though that they've done? So does it have to be something serious to where you get to that point where they don't have the access, or can it be something so minute like,
I don't do
y'all
minor.
have a
I don't do minor.
what do you mean by
I'm
you
not
don't do mine?
I'm not setting, like, I set boundaries on big things. I don't set boundaries on minor things
Right.
because it's minor, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's I think that's something good to distinguish where you're cutting off access for something serious versus y'all just have a little argument or whatever, and then you're just like I'm because I think what some people do is they just let a bunch of stuff just build up, and then
Mhm.
when one little thing happens, they just are like, I'm done with you. I want to have
Been
nothing to
there.
do with you no more. And I'm just like, that is so cruel. Like, it's so
Well, it's
mean.
not it's not, I wouldn't say that it's cruel because I don't see, it's usually not intentional. It's just like when you were talking about, your daughter, you guys will separate for a
Right.
spell and then come back together. That takes
Yes.
emotional intelligence. That requires someone to
Right.
understand what a healthy interaction looks like. And if you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that, then you're not
Yeah.
going to do that. I was married to a person who, the way they grew up, when you have a disagreement, you attack the other person. You win
Mm-hmm.
when you destroy them.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
wasn't raised like that. I didn't come
Yeah.
up in that that household culture. So
Mm-hmm.
it was, even having conflict or disagreement, I handled it differently than he did, and
Yeah.
that did not lend to what I believe to be a successful outcome. But
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we should be asking people when we get in relationship, and not just romantically, but any relationship, what do you
Mm-hmm.
do when you're under pressure? Like, how do you respond? Do you eat a sleeve of Oreos, or do you punch walls? Do you go for
Right.
long walks? Do you screw other people? Do you
Mm.
steal? What do you
Yeah. Yeah.
do when
Yeah.
life gets hard? How do you manage that?
Right.
And what do you want me to do when these seasons come up? How do you need me to respond? Because some people want to be left alone. Some people like, you never called me. Like, I thought you
Mm-hmm.
was managing. I did
Right.
not
Yeah.
know. I'm sorry. I thought I was giving you the space and grace to figure out your stuff, not realizing you wanted a participant.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
those are questions that we should be asking people, or at
Mm-hmm.
minimum volunteering that information. Like, look, I know when times get hard, I'll be on one. I say some wild stuff, or
Right.
I'm going to disappear. I have
Yeah.
to recharge.
Yeah.
And
And I
just
think
seeing
that's
people as
important.
people.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's important because you said a couple of things. So one of them was about the intentional part, because there are people who do intentionally use your like triggers, like if they know that blocking you or being silent or whatever is hurtful, and you've expressed to them like, hey, if we have a falling out, I do better with talking about it.
Mhm.
So if you just tell me what I did wrong, that works for me because then I could correct whatever I did. But you giving me the silent treatment and never telling me what I did wrong, that hurts me. And so
So
when
why are you in
people,
relationship with this person? That's my question. You are
yeah,
setting yourself up for failure for expecting something that was never offered to you.
yeah, and I think
That's why
that's
I'm no contact. You
yeah, and
don't
I think that's
respect
yeah,
me. Yeah, we're not
yeah,
friends. We're not
yeah,
family. You
yeah, and I think
purposely
that's
doing
hard, and
something.
I Right. And I think that's the thing for me is because it's hard for me to let go of people because I think I have an issue with abandonment issues, right? Abandonment,
Same,
rejection issues. And so
same.
I haven't quite navigated on how to let go of people who reject me and abandon me because I'm so it's almost like that mommy daughter father daughter type of thing. I'm like, I want to hold on to them. I want them to love me. I want them to be in connection with me. And they don't want that, or, and so it's just, I think it's
Mhm.
that learning how to let go of expectations of
Yeah.
others and how, yeah. And I think that is so important and so key. And like you said, communicating, if I know someone, if they need space, then I have to let them have that space, right? But they also
Mhm.
have to respect how I feel too, right? They have to listen to, okay, I'll give you your space, but also make sure you communicate with me that
Check in. Yeah.
yeah,
Just check in.
so yeah,
But
yep.
it
So
takes a degree of maturity, and it takes
yeah,
communication, and it takes
yeah,
a sense of vulnerability. Like, who wants to be vulnerable? No one.
right,
No
right,
one wants
yeah,
to be no one's running out here like, "Hey, here's all the things wrong with me. Here's
mhm.
15 ways you can destroy my day. Ready? Let's go." No one's doing that.
Right, yeah,
But
exactly.
when you are in relationship with someone and you hold them dear, those are things
Mhm,
that either you're going to express in one way or another. If you don't flat out write them out or tell them, they're gonna figure
mhm,
you out. You're gonna reveal these
yeah,
things. And
mhm,
hopefully, I would rather figure those things out in a conversation like this when there is no heat
yeah,
versus
exactly.
I find out that when you go for your long walks, you call your ex-girlfriend. I don't want to
Mm,
find that out after we just had a disagreement about the dishes.
mhm,
F
yeah,
you and the dishes, because that's where I'm going immediately.
right,
Tell
exactly.
her to come over here and wash your dishes or take them
Yeah,
dirty dishes over there. These are things that, hypotheticals, but the emotion
mhm,
is still the same behind it.
yeah,
And
yeah. So
how vulnerable are you willing to be with people?
right. And I think that's also another huge thing because I think you have to have a level of trust to be able to share with someone your vulnerabilities or your even, your expectations of boundaries and stuff like that. Because I think when you share things with people, sometimes they use those things that you
Oh my
share.
god. Oh my gosh. I
You,
just thought of something.
yeah.
I
What?
saw it on one of the platforms, TikTok, some I don't know.
Uh-huh.
So what happened was this lady, she had a roommate
Mm-hmm.
and she thought something was up with the roommate. She wasn't sure. And this was
Okay.
a stitch. So the first part was someone saying, "Oh, there's no test to figure out if somebody's gonna use something against you."
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Actually, yes, there is." And I found out the hard way, and it has been beautiful for me. So she had this roommate. Roommate was kind of, she felt the roommate was a little shady. And so they
Mm-hmm.
got into a disagreement in front of mixed company. And the roommate
Okay.
was like, "Well, that's why you afraid of ghosts. How about you tell everybody why you afraid of ghosts, huh?" And
Mm.
the lady in the video was like, I didn't even know what she was talking about. So I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, this is really weird. Why would you bring that up in this situation? Like, what
Yeah.
gives? And then it
Mhm.
dawned on her. She's like, oh, she found, a sore spot for me and wanted to bring it up in mixed company to try and make me feel away. So then she got the bright
Wow.
idea, like, I'm going to use little dummy lines to give to people and see what they do with it. So she was talking to this dude and she told him something like, I don't really like my middle name. And he was like,
Mhm.
oh, just tell me what it is. Tell me what it is. It's like, no, because then you're going to use it and you're going to hold it against me, blah, 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 blah. He's like, I would never do
Mm.
anything like that. She gives him the name. Little time passes. And sure enough, he starts using this name, like calling her by this name. And
Yeah.
she gave him something that meant nothing to her.
Mhm.
So when it popped up, she knew like, "Oh, this is his angle. He's trying to minimize me. He's trying to cut me down in size. Now
Yeah,
I know I can't trust him." And she gives everyone a little thing to hold on to,
that's
but
good.
her people who love her, who ride for her, they never bring
Yeah,
it up. And she's not
yeah.
telling them what it is. Like, "Yeah, my test is
Hmm.
I tell everyone I'm allergic to kiwi and see if your
Right.
man trying to make you a kiwi smoothie." So,
It's silly.
so
Yeah,
it's
that's good though. That's actually that's a
I
pretty
wish
good
I'd
way
known
to
20 years
test you.
ago.
Yeah, because I mean that's as I've gotten older over the years, I've been a little bit more guarded with telling people like my triggers and my traumas because then they use that information to hurt me, like
Yeah.
if you know those things hurt me and then you intentionally do them, like that's just not
That's
that's
the
not a
person
good
you block.
that's not
That's the
yeah,
person you block.
right. Exactly. So, I think a big takeaway from that part of this conversation is that, boundaries are an act of love. Um, they are
Self-love.
Yeah, they are self-love. They're for us, and even sometimes for the other person. And then I think we can, love our parents and our family members or our friends, while we are also like protecting our mental and emotional well-being, So
Mhm.
I think we don't always need to look at boundaries as a bad thing.
They're not.
But it is, like you
A
said,
speed
like it's
limit
a
is a
self,
boundary.
yeah, it's
A seatbelt
yeah,
is a boundary.
exactly. Yeah. So, for me, you know, faith plays like a huge role in how I process, a lot of things, especially like with my mother's passing, in
Mhm.
even our complicated relationship from, from childhood to, teenage years to adult years. I mean, it was always up and down with she and
Of course.
I.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Look, listen, that's like I could write a. I'm actually
That's a
trying to write
book.
my
Yeah.
book. Yes, because
That's a
I
book.
couldn't put it all in a podcast.
Yeah.
But like I said, my faith definitely got me through um my that her passing and me setting that boundary that of blocking her, which I don't think was a healthy way of doing things, but it is what it is. So
In
for
the
you,
moment, it's what works for you, and
it did,
don't beat
yeah,
yourself up over doing what you knew to do in the moment.
in
That
that
was a
moment,
survival
yeah.
moment. That
Yeah,
was
and it really
survival.
was. It really was. It really was because it was a very toxic
Mhm.
interaction with her during her last days. And so, how has your faith or your, spirituality influenced how you navigate relationships, whether platonic, family, um, um, you
Anybody.
know,
Um,
yeah.
I love God. I'm not too fond of a lot of his kids right now,
Mhm.
for weaponizing his word against everything and everyone, like, that's lame. So,
Mhm.
I do focus on and this has been a practice I've been really focused on the last couple of months. I have
Mhm.
to love myself enough to be firm, and I need to be firm about me. Like,
Mhm.
I'll tell anybody, I'm dope as fuck. I'm dope. I'm a dope chick. I love
Dope
me.
AF.
Yeah, I hope you love you as much as I love me. You should,
Yeah.
or more. Also, that means that I gotta be clear about me. I don't want nobody unsure about me. I don't need to be unsure about me. And in me being sure about myself, I need to be sure
Mhm.
about who I'm going to allow in my space and my energy. What am I willing
Yeah.
to attract? We attract what we are. We attract the energy
Mhm.
we hold. And if your
Yeah.
energy is down here, if your energy is you expect for people to be terrible, you expect people to be disrespectful, you expect people to not respect your boundaries, that is exactly what you're going to get. And I'm
Yeah.
not telling you
True.
what I heard, I'm telling you what I know because I've done it. I've
Yeah.
experienced it many times. When I raise my vibration, when I decide, like, I expect these things, this is my life, I'm
Mhm.
always searching for the better feeling thought. If you follow Abraham Hicks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And y'all
Yeah.
don't be surprised when you see a lady named Abraham. It's kind of convoluted, but if you understand spirit, you understand spirit. But
Mhm.
I'm looking for the better feeling thought. And when I find better feeling thoughts consistently, I have a better feeling experience internally and externally. And
Yeah,
so it's really, that is my faith, that is my spirit walk, that is God speaking. God tells
yeah.
us to speak those things that are
Yep.
not, so they can
Right.
become.
Right.
Put the writing on the wall. Write it
Mhm.
out what you want.
Get plain. Yep.
Make
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
plain so you can stick and
Yeah.
move. You look, you keep pressing. And there are
Mhm.
certain things that I want for my life and certain relationships I want to have that I cannot experience if I'm expecting poor outcomes.
Yeah.
If I anticipate poor outcomes. And that's not saying I'm delusional. Like, come on, Shay, be for real. I'm probably one of the most realistic people you're going to encounter. Like, yeah,
You
this is
are.
jacked up. Yeah, like
You are.
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
sugarcoat much. Like,
Mhm.
yo, this is
Which
effed
is why
up.
which is yeah, which
Jack.
is why that's one of the things I love about you.
Thank you.
You are authentic in who you are, what you stand for, and and I think that's why we've always vibed over the years. I mean, you are
Absolutely.
just yeah, you just keep it 100 and I love that about you. Um
Thank you.
so another question that I have for you is like, do you believe that reconciliation is always possible, or is peace, sometimes found in like acceptance rather than repair?
I'm all about accepting. I'm all
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Not to say that reconciliation is not possible, but in
Right.
the cases with me where I've gone no contact, and that's been with my whole family, not just my parents, my siblings and their partners as well.
Mhm.
I'm no contact for good reason. And
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned, there is no reconciliation because the the harm was so grave. Ain't no
Right,
coming
right,
back from
right.
that. It would
Yeah.
literally take the Lord with a talking donkey to come up these stairs into my condo and talk to me face to face. And I'd still be like, is this a Shrek parody? What's with the donkey?
Yeah.
Why am I talking to these people? You can't
Yeah.
send no new family because that's what I want. Like I
Yeah.
want people who see me and love me and appreciate me and understand that when I'm hurting, this affects community. It's not just me. It's
Right,
my
right, right.
children, it's my friends, it's my partner when I have one. It's the
Yeah.
people I work with.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
I'm holistic. Everybody talks about, "Oh, it takes a village to raise a child." Well, stop being the village idiot. Stop
Mhm.
being the village terrorist.
Yeah.
What is your role in this village and why aren't you doing it with excellence to help bring about positive outcomes?
Right. Right. Yeah.
I don't want
So
an
true.
arsonist in the village. Go on somewhere.
Not an arsonist, child. Not people burning it down.
That's what it feels like when someone
Yeah,
intentionally gives you the silent treatment, knowing that
it
you don't like
does.
that. You're
Yeah, it
burning
does.
this relationship down.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not
yep,
with it.
yeah. So true. So true. So, I think, um, our faith, at least for me, I can say, teaches, us to have grace for people, teaches us to have
Mhm.
patience, and it also teaches us to have wisdom. Okay.
Right.
So, but it also teaches us that we are allowed to protect our peace. And we should give ourselves permission to protect our peace when it
I think
comes to
that should be a
setting.
commandment.
Yeah, when it should when it comes to setting boundaries for ourselves. And so,
Mhm.
um, I like us to end with this because you and I can go on and on about this, and maybe we need to write a co book a
I'm with it.
co-authored book on our parents because I'm telling you, man, phew, it was crazy. It was
Mhm.
crazy growing up with a mother who was just yeah, I love her and I miss her. And I miss the chaos sometimes. I miss the
Yeah.
dysfunction. I don't know
That's
why,
home for
but I
you.
do.
That's home.
Yeah,
That's your
that was yeah,
baseline. You're accustomed to.
yeah. Yeah, but if you had one piece of advice to give to the listeners who might be struggling with, setting boundaries with, either their mother, their father, a sibling, a best friend, or a relationship, someone they're in a relationship with, a romantic relationship, what would be
Mhm.
the piece of advice that you would give them?
Oh, this is a good one. 11 years ago, I was pregnant with my first child, and a woman who I had never met before walked up to me. She says, "Are you pregnant?" One, I loved she asked, because don't make
Mhm.
assumptions about people's bodies. I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "This your first kid?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "May I give you a piece of unsolicited advice?" Yes, because of the way you phrase that. You know it's unsolicited, and you're asking
Right.
me, "Is it okay?" "Absolutely. I am waiting with bated breath. What do you have to say?" She said,
Mhm.
"Look, everybody's gonna tell you what you should do. You should co-sleep. You should sleep with a baby down the hall, get a monitor. You should get a TV monitor, just a audio monitor. You should breastfeed. You should formula feed. You should just pump and not." No, she said, "Everybody has something to say. But none of those people will be there at 2:30 in the morning when your breasts are engorged because the baby won't eat. The child has literally pooped the bed. They've got it in their hair, up their back, all in your sheets, and you have to be at work at 8 a.m. They're not coming. So I tell you, do what works for you. And when that
Mhm.
thing stops working, do what works now.
Yeah.
You are the only person who has to deal with the hills and the valleys, who has to deal with the consequences and the rewards. That's all on you. So please do
Mhm.
what works for you so you can make it to the next stage, the next step, the next day, the next hour. I've lived my life in 5-minute increments because
Right.
life was so hard. And that piece of advice has carried me. And I
Mm.
apply it to everything. Well, you should
Yeah.
do it this way, Shay. That don't work for me. I don't have peace with
Mhm.
that. Or that just made
Yeah.
my life more challenging. Now I gotta do 6 steps when I coulda just done 2 over here. This works. When it
Mhm.
stops working,
Mhm.
I'll just find a new thing to do. So anybody in earshot, eye shot, what have you, do what works always, because it works for
That's
you
good.
and you have peace with it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, I think this was a much needed conversation. I truly appreciate, your vulnerability and your honesty, sharing, a little bit of your story about you and your mother's relationship. Um, and, I think setting boundaries with our parents, especially, as we get older, um, it can be one of the hardest things we have to do in this life because our parents are the ones who, they brought us in this world. They gave us like, God, of course, played a role in that, but we came from
Right,
our mother, right? And so it can be hard if we find ourselves having to cut our mothers off, because we need necessary healing or we need peace in our life,
right.
right? And so I think back to the scripture, Exodus 20:12, where it said, "Honor our father and our mother, so we live a long life."
Mhm.
But again, like I said early on, honoring them doesn't mean that we have to tolerate toxic behavior, and that goes for anybody.
Right, and it's not blind obedience either.
Exactly. I think
You
it
have to
just,
rightfully divide the word. Don't be a
right.
cafeteria Christian where the Bible, because some, like, when I went through my divorce, our pastor literally
Hmm.
said, "Well, God don't like divorce." And I said, "God
Hmm.
doesn't like abuse either. So what we gonna do?
Right. Exactly.
What we
Yep.
gonna do? You're
Yeah.
condoning poor behavior that is negatively affecting my life in many ways."
Mhm. Yeah. And that's where
You know,
wisdom that's where wisdom comes in.
exactly.
Yeah, we have to
You know,
learn to move and to love and to function in a place of wisdom and not always obligation, right? So we are
right.
not obligated to do to take abuse. Like we're not obligated to do those things. So
Yeah.
and I think today's episode definitely, resonated with me, just because I go I feel like I'm currently going through this all the time with certain people in my life who I really truly have a love for, but it's almost like I have to learn to set the boundaries too and be like,
And
okay,
you have to love yourself. How
and that's
loving is
it.
it of you
Yeah.
to continuously subject yourself to someone who intentionally presses that button or does that thing? You are not honoring yourself.
Right, and that's so key. Yeah, that's really good that you mentioned that. So, um,
Don't abandon
yeah,
yourself to cling to someone who's intent on abandoning you.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was a very difficult thing for me to come to terms with. I'm
yeah.
abandoning myself if I cling to
Right.
someone who's intent on
Th-
abandoning me.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
That's,
like
that's
that.
yeah. That's
I don't
that's
like that
good
at
to think about. Yeah. So, to my listeners out there, if today's episode resonated with you, Shay and I would love to hear from you. You
Absolutely.
can share your thoughts, put them down in the chat and on YouTube. You can DM us. You could tag a friend who needs to hear this, or a family member who needs to hear this. And if you haven't yeah, listen, sometimes you need to be tagging the people that need to be hearing these things. And if you haven't already, definitely make sure that you're subscribed to Tangi's Tapestry so you can stay informed on the future conversations like this we're going to have. Because I'm pretty sure, Shay, I'm going to get her back on here again for some other topics, because
No doubt, no doubt.
I know she is, I be telling her she need to get her own podcast channel so I can go on hers, because I know she got a lot to share with the people. And so Shay,
No doubt.
as always, she was here on our girl chat. We're gonna do another girl chat, and I'm
Yes,
hoping we can do a girl chat with some guys, and we do a girl guys chat, and get like different perspectives. I think that'd be fun.
indeed.
So yeah. So Shay, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule, my busy schedule. We have like our schedules be, and then we're in
Yeah,
different time zones at that. So I'm like three
right,
hours
no
ahead.
doubt.
So trying to, get each other, on the same schedule. Hopefully I'm gonna be able to come out there and visit. Maybe we'll do a podcast. You, me, Kim, and
Heck
Rochelle.
yeah.
We all get together and do it, because Kim was talking about she want to do it in person. In person. I was like, "Are you better come on over
Yes,
from
let's
where's
go.
she in Ohio or somewhere
Yes,
out
she's
there?"
in.
Yeah. So, but again, thank you all for tuning in to join us in this conversation, and to my listeners, until next time, make sure you're giving yourself permission to set boundaries,
Yes,
and
and
to
hold
protect your
them.
peace. Yeah, protect your peace and love on yourself, and know that it's okay to, and no matter who it is, your mommy, your daddy, brother, sister, cousin, friend, your boo
Any human
thing,
on this
whoever it
planet.
is. Right. Your kids. Shoot, I need to be setting some boundaries for these kids. These kids of
Mhm.
mine.
Eating up all your
um,
snacks.
lit girl, don't even get me started on the snacks. Trinity will eat a whole box of 54 chips, okay, if I let her in a day. The
That's
minute
why
them
I
little
don't buy them. I don't buy
that's what
them.
I be threatening.
You can't
See,
steal what
I
you
need to
can't
set
which is not available. It's
right.
not
I need
there.
to set a boundary. No more
That's my
no
boundary. I
more
don't buy snacks.
chips. Yeah. So, all right. Well, until next time, take
Yes.
care, stay blessed, and I will be tuned back in a couple Mondays from now, and have a good week. Peace
Yes,
out.
you deserve great things.
Thank you for joining me on this journey through Tangi's Tapestry. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Monday, so be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more heartfelt discussions, personal stories, and valuable legal insight. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your family, friends, and followers. Your support means the world to me as I strive to create meaningful content that inspires and empowers. Well, until next time, take care and remember to weave your own unique story into the tapestry of life. See you on the next episode of Tangi's Tapestry.